I'm Lieutenant Colonel Stacy Moore, Gold Miner 07, the Senior Sustainment Trainer at the National Training Center. And I'm here with today's TAC Talk. We are going to talk about maintenance trends and best practices. And as you can see from our chart, we are seeing a rotation to rotation decline in overall readiness rate of 2.17% per rotation for ABCTs that come to the National Training Center. So that means for every Armor Brigade combat team that comes through, we see from one rotation to the next an overall readiness rating that is lower and lower as we go along. If this trend continues, by the last ABCT rotation in 2025, we will have an overall readiness rating for our major combat platforms of 40%. And really, we don't just see this declining readiness rate in our combat platforms. It's a problem across the entirety of our fleets, including our rolling stock and key sustainment systems. So we want to make sure that we understand how to arrest this precipitous drop in OR rate. And you can see from this chart that typically what is happening is that units are reporting a higher readiness rating in their GCSS Army system of record than we are seeing from our observer coach trainers on the ground. And so that mismatch results in us not being able to get parts on order and faults identified on the ESR so that they can be repaired in a timely fashion, resulting in that drop in OR. You can see that particularly for our major combat platforms in an Armor Brigade combat team, the M1A2 and the M2A3, we're seeing those rates drop. And that is a drop that is somewhat mirrored in newer tanks. The M1A2 V3s have a lower average drop in readiness across rotations, but it is still present. So as we go through, I want us to think about how we might apply the best practices that we're going to talk about to our own formations so that we can make sure that we are maintaining our readiness at home station and also as we deploy. Because one of the big problems that we see is that units are reporting between 85 and 90% before they put their equipment on the train, because that's what our leaders expect of us. But once the equipment comes off the train, we see a precipitous drop, usually somewhere in the range of 75 to 85%. So at least a 10% drop coming off the train, and then an additional drop before the first battle period as unit mechanics are able to get onto their pieces of equipment and start troubleshooting faults that perhaps we should have identified at home station. So let's take a look at some of the best practices that we see from our OCs and from our units at home station. So one of the very most important things we can do is create discipline in our maintenance management systems. And the most important part of that maintenance management system to help us understand our OR rates is that regular battalion maintenance meeting. That maintenance meeting has to include the right people. So your battalion XO, your battalion maintenance officer, your tech, and the company XOs all have to be present and prepared to talk about what's going on with their maintenance. So if our personnel decide that it's not really that important, maybe the battalion XO delegates that down to the tech, and maybe the company XOs don't all make it, we're not going to have an efficient maintenance meeting. We need to ensure that our junior leaders understand how to read an ESR and are reporting accurately and truthfully about what's going on with their fleet. For example, if a tech tells you they're going to change a tank engine in 2 hours, they're probably not being entirely truthful if they haven't started that job. We need to understand how long things take in space and time, whether we have all the resources needed to do those jobs, and then reflect those things accurately when we're bringing our ESR to our maintenance meeting. That battalion maintenance meeting sets our foundation for our brigade maintenance meeting, which is one of the more important ways the battalions can receive additional resources to put into their maintenance efforts back in their battalions. And those battalion maintenance meetings should be chaired either by the BSB commander or the brigade XO. We typically see units that have a commander, a battalion level commander, chairing those meetings do a little bit better than those who don't because of the emphasis that that person is able to put on those processes. But the brigade XO can also chair. But the brigade XO should be there, the SPO, the brigade maintenance tech, the battalion XOs, and the battalion techs, as well as anyone else, NCOs or MCOs that can help inform the maintenance process. But those folks should be there at a minimum. Certainly at home station, face-to-face meetings are a lot easier and the most enjoyable method of getting that after that. But out in the training area or when units are deployed, sometimes face-to-face meetings become a little harder. And there's a lot of reasons why we think we can't meet face-to-face. Our maintenance is very important. If we cannot build combat power, we cannot then close with and destroy the enemy. The best way to build combat power is to have our maintenance leaders come face to face and decide what resources and what priorities we're going to put on our various jobs to make sure that we can build combat power for the brigade. Units that are not able to do face-to-face maintenance meetings here in training and further when they deploy find a lot of difficulty in building combat power. So it's really important that whenever able, we've got all those people talking face-to-face and we're able to get after it. And we have the same problems with ESRs and readiness for that brigade level maintenance meeting that we see at the battalions. So we need to make sure that we are empowering our battalion XOs with the appropriate information so that they can go into those meetings ready to discuss things like controlled exchanges, whether or not we need FSR support, whether or not all of our parts are on hand, if there's difficulties with the SSA, whether or not we need help getting parts from there. All of those things can be discussed at that brigade level maintenance meeting and will help us to build combat power much more quickly. Before we even get to the National Training Center or to a deployment though, there's some things we should be doing at home station. When we look at our day-to-day maintenance activities, that's another place where we need to include additional discipline into our systems. We have to schedule maintenance activities into our training calendars. Things like inventories and regular time to close out job orders and things like that in our systems of record must be done routinely if we're going to get things done. And so we need to make sure that we've put that into our training calendar. We need to ensure that we're picking up our parts at the SSA regularly, at least once a day. And in environments like this or in a deployment, twice a day is often preferable. And we also need to make sure that we're exercising good ordering discipline with regards to our SSA. If we overwhelm the SSA with parts that we don't need or parts that have to be double ordered because we've lost track of them, we are just creating an unnecessary burden and slowing the rate at which parts come to us. And we don't want to do that. We need to make sure that we've got a good mechanism to track our daily PMCS and our 5988 turn-in at home station and for any operations away from home station. And we need to make sure that we provided our soldiers the tools to actually do those PMCSs. Everyone agrees that PMCS is a great idea, but if the soldiers don't have manuals or have any way to look up what the PMCS checklist is, you're not going to get a good product. And then the other thing that is ancillary to our maintenance process, or we might not think about, is our VSAT functionality. We've seen many people come out here and have a VSAT in their maintenance activity that is not working. That makes it impossible for their GCSS Army box to communicate with the rest of the enterprise, and that also slows parts velocity. So anytime your VSAT is broken or running slowly, it should become an emergency to that battalion XO so that you get it fixed as soon as possible so that you can get your parts flowing again. These are just a few of our best practices that I think are relatively easy to institute back at home station before you come on a deployment or an NTC rotation, and also fully able to be implemented while you are in an austere environment like this. So hopefully this will be helpful as you work forward in creating a really awesome maintenance program. I'm going to show you some resources really quickly that may be able to help as we continue to improve our overall readiness rate. The first is the PMCS app that was developed by Futures Command. We go to this link, soldiers are able to access this from their personal device. It is not very useful in an austere environment or deployment because we want to avoid using cell phones, but in our motor pools, at a minimum, our soldiers will be able to practice a 2 standard PMCS multiple times, and it is beneficial in that way. Additionally, the CASCOM Sustainment Knowledge Network has videos of how to run an efficient maintenance meeting, as well as a number of other tools that are useful to our maintenance managers. The Gold Miner team puts out a podcast called The Dirt Logistician that has a wealth of topics, including maintenance management, that may be helpful to our maintenance professionals. And the Gold Miner team also has a mill suite. That is where we've hung many products, including maintenance management scorecards, other products related to running good maintenance meetings, and some information on how to read your ESR and understand the various codes that are associated with that. So we really appreciate you spending a little time with the team. We hope this TAC Talk was useful to you, and if you have any questions or require assistance, please reach out to the Gold Miner team.